Hello, and welcome to another edition of Wake Up to Your Life Magic. My name is Dr. Helmut Love, and I'm excited because we are going to be talking about conversations that we hope elevate our leadership in the world that we live in. You can learn more about the book and the podcast at wakeuptoyourlifemagic.com. And today I'm very excited because I have with me Ron Higgs. Ron Higgs is an executive coach focused on supporting engineers who are usually data and analytic focused to become effective executives. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Helmut. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to do a quick plug now and again at the end, but you can check out Ron at wolfmanagementsolutions.com. Ron, as our first question on the show, I like to ask guests about really about a story maybe that you connected to, that a moment in your life that changed you, shifted you, that you just kind of want to share with us so that we can learn something about who you are.
Wow, let me think. There are a few, but I'll tell you this. Years ago, my spouse at the time gave me a gift. She gave me a saxophone. I was in the Navy. Yeah, it was a nice gift. So I was in the Navy and I expressed some interest in playing the saxophone. And I went, wow, this is great. So let's fast forward a little bit, maybe a couple months or something. And we were in Washington, D.C., and I saw a homeless guy playing a saxophone. And he was, and the saxophone was worn. You could see it was worn, and he was just out playing, and he was doing a really good job. And so I asked him if he would teach me how to play the saxophone. And he said, absolutely, I will. I lived far away from DC at the time. The story doesn't have the end that you would want, meaning I would have been willing to go and do that, but I just couldn't. And I wish I would have. But the moral of that is that at the time I was in the Navy and I was doing well. I was in test pilot school, which was a place that I had dreamed of being. I was a flight instructor at test pilot school, and life was good. But I was willing to learn something from a homeless person. So that just tells me that, and it should tell everyone else, that you can learn something from anyone, and you should be willing to do that.
Yeah, that's true. And I think our openness to the fact that a lesson can come from anyone, right? You never know the packaging. You may judge the packaging, but if you're smart, you're going to look past it and realize they may have some life lesson for you. That's beautiful, Ron.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely have found that and experienced that. Once you start to learn that, I would say everyone has a lesson to teach you, right? Once you learn that, you start looking at things differently and interacting differently, right? So tell us a little bit about with your business and really in helping engineers and also others to sort of make an improvement to their executive leadership. Tell me what your mission is in the world, what you're creating, and what you're hoping to see because of the work you do.
I think that most of us have seen when a professional, no matter what it is, whether it's a salesperson, an engineer, whatever the case may be, starts doing well, and their company says, you're doing great, we're going to promote you and make you a manager. And then what happens? A lot of those people fail. The company doesn't provide any training or anything, and people just get stuck. And for me, I really enjoy helping people make their transition from individual contributor to people manager. And I was a technical program manager, and I led several teams, and I had teams of engineers, and I also had lead engineers who were managers. And I had one of the engineering managers come up to me and say, Ron, I'm just fed up with all of this crap, which was, meetings, trying the cat herding and everything you have to do as a leader. He goes, I just want to go back to being an engineer, or I want to go back to being just an engineer.
Sure.
And after some discussion about, well, let's think about these things and let's see what you're doing and how I can help you. And I remember providing some coaching and guidance to that engineer. And after a few months, I went on a 10-day vacation. And not only did he start feeling more comfortable, more confident about it, and no longer wanted to go back to being just an engineer, but he sat in for me as the boss when I was gone for 10 days and didn't call me once. So that's when I realized I had sort of a gift of helping people. Now, I can help anyone, but to separate myself from the hordes of other coaches that are out there, I went back to something I knew. I am an engineer. I've been an engineering manager. I've led teams of engineers, and that's where my expertise lies. So that's where I'm focused.
Yeah, that's great. I am an engineer too, and it is a craft and a special area because managing engineers is different than managing salespeople, right? You're dealing with a different skill set, a different sensitivity, a different proclivity towards maybe certain weaknesses and strengths. So I totally get that. Now, tell me, um, as you sort of think about leadership, and we think about really leading a team of people, you've had that experience military, you've had experience in corporate. Tell me about how I'll call it uh, values, morals, standards, ethics. How does that play into leadership of a team?
Well, I think that everyone has to have their own set of values. You also have to understand the values of the organization that to which you belong. And I believe, let's have an example. When you're hiring people, and if you own an engineering firm and you're looking to hire electrical engineers, and you have hundreds of qualified, maybe not hundreds, but a lot of qualified electrical engineers who have applied for the job and are qualified. So, how do you separate the qualified people,
Mm.
the ones that you want to work for your company? So, it should be values alignment. And so, your interview process and things like that should align with your values, the things that you ask. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The things that you ask them to, the skills that you ask them to demonstrate should be things that align with the company values. So I believe that's how you end up with the right people in the company who are living and demonstrating those values. So that's where you start. But some people can't express their own values. And until you're able to do that, well, I will say this, being able to do that, I think, gives you a leg up in leadership. And one quick example, one of my values is humility. I have never walked into anywhere and pretended that I've had all the answers and that I
Mhm.
know everything. And I prefer to surround myself with smart people and people smarter than me. I'm not scared to surround myself with people smarter than me. So I will walk in, and if I don't know something, I go, I don't know. So let's work together. What's your recommendation? Because I endeavor to learn something from everyone as we go back to. So every person that I've ever had on any team to which I have belonged, I've learned something from.
So that's beautiful. So you have this, let's say this is a value of humility, right? And I love what you said is the ability to articulate it. So for many of us, we come in with a predetermined set of values. And what I mean by that is um, we all come from different faiths, different sort of standards, cultures, right? That we all kind of come into a room with when we walk into any group. But what you said about articulating it, um, I kind of want to just explore that a little bit. It's about articulating it almost in a universal way, right? In a universally grounded way that is not exclusionary of anyone, right? I'm trying to think about sort of like what would we say is the best way to convey a value um, that's or select from your values, right? The ones that you're going to reveal in a work environment where people are different and which ones not to. Um, And I think it kind of comes along to which ones we know the company would share, right? Is that effectively what you were saying with the sort of looking at the company?
Yes, I mean, we ideally, and this doesn't always work out, that you
Sure.
will work somewhere where there's a match in values. People who dedicate their time to nonprofits probably do it through values alignment,
Yeah.
right? And so, ideally, it would be great to do that in a work environment. And I know that that's not always the case, where the company's values align 100% with yours. But there should be some kind of alignment. Otherwise, it might not be the right place for you to work,
Right.
if that is understandable.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's that element, and there's a. What's interesting is the role of the executive, right, in helping to set those values, right, and the role of us as individuals inside the group, um, adhering to them, embodying them, and giving feedback. Um, it's really this is a really interesting conversation. Simply because our values is the lens through which we do our work, right? And we extend ourselves or we don't extend ourselves. And I think in many ways, a lot of corporate America today is struggling with shared values, right? You have these trends of people like quitting while they're working, right? And really not honoring that the company's going to take care of me because they're not, I'm not going to take care of the company's not taking care of me. So these interesting paradigms in which people are going into contracts, they're working, but maybe their actual values that they're willing to share, right, with the company aren't the same because the relationship's different. Just curious how much you've seen or experienced that in your coaching, as we kind of just think about how things are in the world of corporate and with teams.
I think too few people have considered that. And the one reality that we all have to face is that some people are just in it for a paycheck.
Mm,
And not everyone, I had a conversation with a young person who recent college graduate wanting to join the workforce. And she's like, I just want to pursue my passion. Well, right now you're still living in your parents' house and you're old enough to be self-sufficient. So perhaps you should just find something that will get, that will lead to that independence before you start going to what your passion is, because that might be a reward for a little bit of sacrifice or hard work right now.
right.
So,
And the individual's like, no.
while mid 20s, what can you tell them? Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
not as willing to listen. But again, there are some people out there that are just in it for the paycheck and not really dedicated. It's like, oh, maybe haven't figured out who they are yet. May not be that concerned with the values. The thing is, I think that they do have values. They may not be able to articulate them, and
Hmm.
I don't think they're going to work in a place that they're really not comfortable with. And this isn't a political conversation, but if their values are one side of the political spectrum, they probably wouldn't go work for a company that's on the other side. So they do have some values that maybe they can't articulate clearly, but I think that their work takes them in the direction that's pointed towards their values.
Yeah, and that's so challenging, right? Because at the end of the day, we we all benefit from just really having loving, hardworking environments, right? That are more focused on taking care of clients and using all the team's assets to the best ability, um, which is really sometimes challenging to find. And I guess as businesses are as varied as people. So you're right, Ron, that we find sort of different flavors of cultures that are out there.
Well, I'll tell
Um,
you what I miss the most about the military, because I just spend the
yeah.
majority of my career in the military, and I crave it, a collaborative environment, meaning
Mm,
everyone is there to help each other, not
mm,
stab each other in the back, not jockey for position, just to help each other. Because remember, the military, our units, whatever they were, we will sometimes, depending on what unit we're in, especially if we're in that active frontline unit, depend on each other for our lives. And so it has to be collaborative. There has to be trust. And everyone wants everyone else to be the best that they can be. So that creates that collaborative environment, which I have craved since I left the military. I wish there were more environments out there, working environments collaborative, but I've run into too few.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And it's funny that you say that, because there's sort of this nature of corporate America to create interfighting within functions. It's really interesting, right? In the thirst for productivity or profit or revenue. Some organizations are really effective at everyone really truly is a team, and the quote unquote enemy is the competitor. And then other environments really they strive for that, but they actually play a lot off of inter company competition, right? And then you realize, to your point, like, I'm the engineer and I'm being questioned all the time as to my productivity, right? Because people really, really want to get as much out of me. But now I've got, an aggressive product function, quality function, sales function that's really oppressive, and has now played politics inside a company. And you're completely off the topic, right? You're completely in a political landmine inside a company that's serving a client, right?
I have experienced this firsthand, so I know exactly what you mean. And
Yeah, I think,
those,
go ahead.
those things don't, they may work for a while with depend on the size of the company, but the company has to grow up and get people out of that. I didn't find it productive, and it wasn't an environment that I enjoyed.
Yeah. So I think that it's interesting though, because engineers, now that we're speaking about it, engineers are often left out of that conversation, right? They are the least, not saying all of them, but they tend to be the least people savvy, right? They're focused on the product, the solution, right? And the others are focused on the politic, the interconnection, the relationship, just by virtue of their roles and their strengths. So it's interesting, because it often puts engineers sort of at a political disadvantage, which really makes a higher bar for what you got to teach them on.
I have noticed that as an engineer myself. Most engineers, introverted, and you're right. Our lives are governed more by logic than emotion, and on the other side, you probably have the most difficulty dealing with people whose lives are driven more by emotion than logic. So that people are always a challenge with engineers, because as an engineer in the systems in what that I work with, there's an input and then you get the same output every time. Human beings don't work that way. It's ultimately confusing to us engineers. Like, it doesn't compute. Right? So
Yeah, and then it's interesting, because you're right. You have that piece, but then I've also met engineers that are extremely sensitive, that are extremely, they notice, right? Man, the QA specifically was 1 hour later than I told them to. Like, they'll know exactly,
yeah.
right? And so they get really sensitive with each other. So leading an engineering team can be a really unique balance in sort of all these sensitivities inside of really bright humans, right? Who create amazing things, but have some special management needs.
But everyone does. I've worked outside of the engineering discipline, well outside of the engineering discipline, to know that when human beings are involved, all of the interpersonal relationships are the same. And in other words, all the crap that you deal with is the same. So as a consultant, has moved around and worked with different companies, I've just seen some of the same thing, some of the same things, some of the same issues, and mostly they're the people challenges that you have to deal with. And so when I work with engineers who have moved up from individual contributor to people manager, the people management stuff turns out to be the biggest thing that they deal with instead of the things that they love the most, which is the actual engineering and is the engineering work. So there's that mindset shift of, man, I am no longer a technical expert. I am a people leader. And that's the
I'm a
first
people leader.
significant
Yeah,
mind shift you have to make.
that's true. How do you think sort of this ability to speak clearly about, let's say, values, shared goals. Um, do you think that we're able to connect with each other as much in these areas in our modern work world?
It depends on the company and the individuals. And I'll go back to my experience in the military again. Military does something very well, which is alignment in the mission. So everybody knows the mission because we all took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I was in the Navy. I understood the Navy. I understood the different parts of the Navy. Well, the Navy has airplanes, the Navy has submarines, the Navy has ships, the Navy has SEALs, all sorts of things, and how we all work together to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So when I was on an aircraft carrier and I'm flying a mission off the aircraft carrier, what I was doing in that airplane, I was able to clearly map back to supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States. So in my efforts, again, let's understand the company mission. Let's understand the company vision. Let's understand the company values. Let's understand the strategic goals, and then what our part in achieving the strategic goals are. And I think if you can provide that kind of alignment to where everyone is going in every day and looking at every action they take and seeing how that action contributes to accomplishing the mission, you'll get better performance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I strive to do with the folks that I coach. And it may seem it's like, oh, this is silly. Why are we reviewing the mission? Okay, let's just stick with it. This is why, and this is how you end up inspiring people and giving them the big picture as to how their work really matters.
Right, because it does.
Absolutely.
But they don't understand that connection, right? And so that's really beneficial, right? Because I do think at different levels, right, you're dealing with different things. You're either setting the culture, right, or you're enforcing the culture, so to speak, or encouraging the culture in the team. And I think a lot of people often are, it's challenging because as managers, you're either looking sometimes for the metric, right? Maybe a metric that you were given that, hey, we need to get XYZ units out. I'm thinking about story points or development hours or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Versus the end goal here is to have a quality product that the client loves, right?
Right.
Can be very different as you're managing those things.
Well, we're all KPI focused these days. Everybody's focused on some kind of metric. It's like everyone should have a metric that they're measured by. And I agree. One of the difficult things for engineers is that there are soft metrics, relationships, how people feel, employee engagement. I don't think there are any numbers. Those are subjective things that you can assign some sort of objective measure to, but it's still soft data. And so engineers with our logical minds sometimes disregard soft data because, well, I can't really analyze chart. I can't see it. It doesn't have a number, so it must not matter. Well, it turns out that it does, right? Sometimes you will have to make decisions that are best for the relationships and not necessarily best for the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I
logic would drive you to one conclusion, but emotions, things that you can't measure, will drive you to the right conclusion. So if you have too many people thinking logically, then things become brittle and unemotional.
Yeah, one of the most effective methods I ever encountered for this was really, really effective retrospective work within development teams. Kind of doing that on a regular basis, where you literally had people that were looking. You had a whole culture like sharing and feedback, it was interesting because it took care of the soft areas, Ron, without necessarily ever really being managed, like metered, right? Simply because the team felt an ability to work on the relationships part, which one almost intuitively doesn't think of like, oh, that's super important with an engineering team, but it's super important.
It is. I'll go back to the military again, and especially aviation. And you talked about feedback. Feedback's really important, but feedback seems to be a four-letter word for some. So,
Mm,
in my experience in aviation, what we do is we brief before every flight. There's a flight brief, there's the execution of the flight, and then there's a debrief for every flight. So, the event is not complete until the debrief. And we debrief no matter how it goes, right? Even if it goes perfectly, we still
amazing.
debrief. And that's where the learning takes place. And the debrief is a no ego, no, everybody's rank or position is off the table. We talk about what went right, what went wrong, what we could do better next time, everything. Because there are lots of variables, in flying, there are variables over which you have no control, right? Air traffic
Right.
control sometimes, the weather, other aircraft. And if you're in a combat situation, certainly the enemy is not going to follow your plan. So the
Right.
debrief is important, and that's where I learned the importance of feedback, and I crave it. So one of my challenges I had when I transitioned from the military is I always asked for feedback on projects and what I was doing, and people just seemed to be, okay, feedback. We only do that once a year during the performance evals. Well, that shouldn't be it. Feedback should be constant. No one should ever be surprised by a performance evaluation discussion, right? Because
Mm,
that should be ongoing, and it should be part of what we do every day. And in places that I've worked as a fractional COO, I try to instill that. Let's go over this project. This project is complete, and I am not going to sign it off as complete until we have a postmortem, a debrief, whatever you want to call it. And I remember doing that one time, and we charged the company I was working for charged the client $15,000 for a project, and we went and reviewed it, and it cost us $45,000 internally to do that project. We can't keep
to
doing
do
business.
the review. To do the review.
Well, we at the review, no, we figured out that the project actually cost us $45,000 to do. So we can't, obviously, you can't stay in business that way. So that's where that debrief becomes very important. I say, hey, what happened? What can we do better? Was it the proposal where we screwed up? Did we fail somewhere in the execution? What happened? But those are valuable lessons that can be learned, but for some reason, a lot of companies tend to avoid that feedback.
Yeah. So tell me as we sort of transition to now, you run this business. For some of our listeners, I love this part of the show because we talk about where you might struggle in your business. A lot of times, we as business owners, everything looks polished, everything looks great, and it's not all simple. So, what would you share about a challenge you faced in your business that others can appreciate?
I think that I'm a solopreneur, so it's just me. And I have some partners that I work with if I need to. I still feel like I'm a well kept secret. So my marketing efforts and amplifying my impact and things like that, that has constantly been a challenge because as a solopreneur, I choose LinkedIn as my channel, my primary channel, networking, referrals. There are lots of folks that do appearing on podcasts. I'm doing everything that I can.
Right.
Um, I could probably have a better plan. I could probably use some help, but I'm doing what I can. So in the big scheme of things, yes, I'd like to help more people, and I'd like to be able to amplify my impact a lot more. And that's probably the biggest challenge that I face.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, as you like many of us who have been through these rounds of life, if there's a lesson that you might share something that you learned the hard way, or that you wish you would have learned faster, so that maybe one of our listeners can save some time.
Well, let me speak to the technical folks and the engineers. Maybe it applies after this, right? But the technical skills alone will not take you as far as you think, right? You have to develop people skills. You cannot have leadership skills until you have people skills. So, for those that are out there that think just being technically astute and being the best engineer you can is going to carry you far, it may, but you'll have a lot more impact in learning some of the people skills and appreciating all that. So
Mm-hmm.
the technical skills aren't everything. Being good at what you do aren't everything. Even if you've watched the Top Gun series, even Maverick, I think, learned, hey, just it's more than just being a great pilot. At some point, you, great pilot, as you move on in your career, have to inspire others to be great pilots. So you have to be
True.
able to learn those skills.
Yeah. No, that's true. And it's one of those hard things that it's almost like you don't want to learn it till you have to learn it. But if you don't just get on with it, you're gonna you're gonna suffer. It's like
Right,
the advanced skill that, yeah, and it's an advanced life skill, right? It
right.
doesn't just apply in the work area. So interesting and very true. Thank you so much, Ron, for joining me today in this dialogue. It's been great. And I've really enjoyed our banter and our thought process around how to really imbibe values in your employees as a leader. I will remind you all who are joined online, you can check it out on the visual here, or if you're listening, wolfmanagementsolutions.com is where you will find more information about Ron and his solutions. Ron, any last words for the audience?
Oh, I'd like to thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And the audience, please follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, like, share some of my posts if you like them, sign up for my newsletter. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we will catch you all again on the next episode of Wake Up to Your Life Magic. Thank you.
Thanks, Helmut.